Hello, hello. Welcome everybody to Watch Mojo's live rank. Today we're going to be counting down, ranking our top 10 TV anti-heroes with the help of our friends in the chat. But before we dive in, allow me to introduce myself. I am Mackenzie, the writing coordinator here at Watch Mojo, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues and friends, Andrew and Tim. Guys, if you'd like to say hello.
Yeah, I am Andrew. I'm a content editor at WatchMojo, and I wanted to say that not all anti-heroes wear capes, but I did for the sake of that extremely stupid joke.
You have Dracula energy, but I think I like it.
I'm Tim. I'm also a content editor at WatchMojo, and I am the one who knocks.
There you go. Welcome to you, and welcome to our friends and fans in the chat. Just a friendly reminder that while this stream is open for all to view, only WatchMojo channel members get to participate in the live chat. So if you like what you see, you'd like to jump in and receive a whole bunch of other cool exclusive offers and content, don't forget to click join under the WatchMojo channel banner on our page. And I would also like to mention that we have debuted this week WatchMojo Daily Trivia Challenge, a super cool game on our website where you can win cash, other fabulous prizes. The game is every day at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The theme today is music, so we'll see you there. So now that that's kind of out of the way, we are doing TV anti-heroes today. Before we dive into it, I will just explain a little bit what we have in front of us. Of course, we have names, show, years. We have the original rank from the video that we published in 2013. We have our 3 fan ranks here, and we have our fan rank column here, which is where our new fresh and fine rank that we're going to put together today will live. So we have gone to the trouble of making a little short list. Basically, any TV anti-hero listed on here that showed up in 2 or more ranks between the original and our own automatically gets shortlisted for consideration. But please sound off in the chat if there's anything on this document that you would like to see represented in this list. So take a breath. I think before we get into it, let's define what an anti-hero is.
What is an anti-hero?
What is an anti-hero? Andrew, how did you approach your rank?
So I saw it as someone who perfectly balances that line of villain and hero. Basically, they are the person making things happen, but they're doing it in dark ways that you wouldn't necessarily do yourself. And I ranked it by how consistent they are, like how that balance was from beginning to end of their show.
Yeah, okay, cool. Tim, what about you?
No, I mean, basically the same thing. I mean, I think a lot of these characters can... Anti-heroism is a very fluid thing. You know, you can wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm a villain, I'm gonna kill a bunch of people, and then the next day you're like, you know what, I'm a hero, I'm gonna save this baby. You know, it's characters can sometimes come back and forth.
Busy week.
Hey, you know, when you're an anti-hero, you know, you wear different capes, as Andrew said.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because for me, I was thinking that, like, it's true. It's all about, like, ambiguity, about people who are doing things that are evil, but we still end up kind of rooting for them. So I was thinking maybe it boils down to having some kind of relatable factor, even when they're doing things that we don't endorse, even when our anti-heroes are doing things that we can't morally endorse, that we don't support, that we, you know, can say are evil or immoral or whatever. We can still kind of, like, identify with some element of their motivation. If it's like, you know, powerlessness or obligation. I think those are like themes that'll come up a lot as we're getting into these characters and what they're all about. Even as they're killing people and doing absolutely crazy things, you still kind of like are rooting for them because you can see their journey. Yeah, so that's kind of how I approached my rank. And I agree with what you say when you talk about there's a balance between like consistency, who's consistently an anti-hero, when anti-hero itself is kind of defined by duality. These are all really, what do you guys think these characters have in common outside of that? Because I was seeing, like I said, there's like themes of, I think power is something that comes through in a lot of these characters.
Yeah, I think it starts. I think the common thing is they start with really good intentions, but somewhere along the way, power starts taking them away into just further away from morality. They just get consumed by it or the pursuit of it, that they have to stop and go, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't have kicked that child 2 minutes ago. Maybe I've gone too far.
That was too far. A little self-reflection. A little self-reflection. Take a break. Take a walk. Yeah. Okay, so I guess let's go. So I think we have a good sense of what an anti-hero is then. Because I was seeing, some people were saying that, or I was reading online that an anti-hero could also be defined as a character whose efforts are kind of like useless from the beginning, or they're doomed no matter what. And so you're rooting for them even though you know their quest is somewhat destined to be unfulfilled. But I prefer, I think, this definition that we've been working with of like someone who is constantly kind of dabbling in good and evil in pursuit of, you know, even if they don't think it's best, but are motivated by things that are identifiable even when we don't necessarily agree. So I think in terms, let's focus on those characters because I think that's more interesting. And
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so yeah, so then let's talk about what we are and are not including in this list. Because I think we should say we're not including animation.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Rick Sanchez. I also saw BoJack was coming up a lot, and I was like, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, and I was like, having BoJack and like Omar Little on the same list is like kind of funny, or like BoJack and Walter White.
Crossover we've been waiting for so long.
Yeah, please. Who's animated in that crossover? Okay, so I think we should also, okay, so we're gonna stick with live action. I think we should also stay away from characters that started out as movie anti-heroes and then got a show.
Yeah.
I think we should stick, if we're doing TV anti-heroes, we got to look at TV anti-heroes.
Yeah, because there's so many. There's so many crossovers. So yeah, for the sake of it, Born on TV is the best way to go.
Sorry, Loki.
Sorry, yeah. I guess it was kind of like a direct call out of like, it's like if you have like one character and then they get given like this whole expansive plot to like develop and change. It's like, I don't know if they're really like a TV villain necessarily. On that note, I was wondering about Hannibal though. Tim, you put Hannibal in your rank. So in that sense, what do you think justifies him in that?
I mean, he's always been kind of a villain you root for even when he was in the movies.
Yeah.
But I think what makes him an anti-hero on the show is that you get to explore more his relationships with the other characters. I mean, he's always been a character who either really respects someone for their intelligence or really doesn't for their rudeness. And there are enough characters like Will Graham on the show that meet his intellect and can, you know, engage with him in that way. So he really values that. But at the same time, he is still super self-preserving. So he's not worried about, you know, crossing someone if he needs to. So
yeah.
Great.
But is he a TV villain?
I mean, this version of him, it's not the Anthony Hop. It's not in continuity, so I counted it. But
yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, I think that makes total sense. Let's get into this rank. I'm so excited. I was like, normally, or like, there's often disparity between our ranks. I think this time we're pretty clear across the board. In the beginning, before we start getting into the nitty gritty, the 6s, the 7s, the 10s, we always decide right off the bat what's going to be our top 3. And sometimes there's some debate, but it was 100% unanimous this time around that we have Dexter Morgan, Walt White, and Tony Soprano in the top 3. I'd like to send a poll to our friends in the chat. Do you agree with this top 3, yes or no? Let's start there and see what else we get. My mouse is going crazy. I'm gonna mark these off.
They're an elite top 3. I think so. I think you don't get more solid than this.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mount Rushmore. -1 Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore of TV anti-heroes.
The Mount 3 more.
Oh my god. Who would be, how many, are there 4 faces in Mount Rushmore?
There are 4.
5?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So then I guess that's a perfect lead in to who's the 4th best anti-hero.
Who's the Jefferson?
Yeah. My vote was for Omar Little. I'm surprised that you guys didn't put him on your list. That is Barack Obama's favorite TV character.
Sorry,
I
Obama.
learned in doing research for the show. I read in an offhand quip in an article. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just been, there's been so many more layered anti-heroes that, like, Omar is a great character, but I think there have been so many more anti-heroes since then that really deserve a little shout out.
Fair. I will say what I find so refreshing about Omar, especially in that era, is that it's kind of like a show that could have been filled with tropes, you know, like the hard-boiled detective, the like kind of gangsters trying to protect their family, or like whatever, these clear kind of like binary characters, and Omar kind of like transcends them, and he's in his own way like very worldly, and even though he is tough as nails and everybody is afraid of him, Omar Kamen, he's actually privately like very tender, and this dynamism in his personality allows him to really be on top of absolutely everyone and rise above the entire situation, all situations. 85% of our friends in the chat say yes, they agree with that top 3, so that is solid. I'm delighted. So we'll stick with that. But what do you guys think should be top 4? Should be our 4th pick?
I think the data is kind of pointing to a recent one, Joel. You know, even though he came, like the original version of his character came from a video game, him on TV is completely different. It's a completely different adaptation. There's, of course, similarities between the origins and stuff, but since it's like he starts on TV as his adaptation, it's like completely different. He has so many layers, and from the beginning, it's like he wants to do the right thing, but he absolutely does not care what he has to do to achieve that, and that never changes for him.
Yeah, he's the epitome of like a character who does bad things for good reasons, you know, when the good reason being just to protect this one person. But, you know, when you only put one person ahead of everyone else, then it kind of sucks for everyone else. Yeah, he's very interesting that he has very, it's his love literally that destroys everything else around it.
Yeah, and I think it's like there is that element of like relatability, like in the end where you're like, oh yeah, like you see his motivation, you see like his pain, and you see his desire to protect and to love and to be like a father in this, but it's like you have to like look in the mirror in a way and say like, but for humanity, like for the sake of humanity, that's what makes him like, I think, both lovable and evil, even though I think, you know, we hear about this ambiguous history of evil things, but we never see any of that. But I think he's someone who is maybe like driven by redemption, or this feeling of redemption that keeps us kind of engaged with his story, even if we don't agree with all he's doing. So I'm seeing lots of love for Omar in the chat. If you come for the king, you best not miss. So I'm interested in putting Omar at 4 and maybe putting Joel at 5.
Yeah, it's fair.
Omar's a classic.
Yeah.
Classic. Such a great character. Now, I wanted to talk about House. I'm interested Tim, that you didn't put him in your rank? What?
Well, there's a better character that's basically him. It's called Sherlock Holmes, right?
Oh.
Yeah, but I mean,
Have you ever heard Sherlock Holmes say it's not lupus 100 times? I don't know. I don't know. Clear difference to me.
okay, so yeah, so I mean, House is really Sherlock Holmes. That's, I mean, the parallels are endless.
Yeah.
I do think he makes for an interesting anti-hero because he's like the anti-hero savant in that, like, he's not evil, but he's so unlikable in his relationships, but somehow he remains someone that you still kind of like root for or empathize with. And I think I learned in doing research for the show that in 2008, House was the #1 most watched show in the world in 2008, which is crazy. So to think that it's not like as story driven the way like The Sopranos is so story driven. It's about the character, but it's also about, you know, relationships and this and this and this. House is really about House. And so there's one man carrying the biggest show on planet Earth for like years. I think that like as a character, it really speaks to like how Hugh Laurie is able to walk that line of like someone who is like pretty cruel in some ways, but also remain sympathetic without just doing kind of like token nice things sometimes. So that was why I put him at 6, just for like impact and for performance, because the show is him. There's not a lot else. There's not that much going on.
Yeah, name like 4 other people that aren't House on that show.
House's friend.
House's friend. House's
his
colleague.
His intern.
His neighbor.
Yeah.
You know the one?
Yeah, that one. So that was why I put him in the rank. But let's do a poll and just see, does House deserve to be in the top 10 here? Yes or no? I say yes, just for like impact alone and being part of that first kind of wave of anti-heroes that sets the stage for the more recent entries that we're seeing. So while we wait for that, what do we think about Don Draper? Because he is kind of an anti-hero of a different kind.
Bygone era.
Yeah, I think Don Draper is one of those that he kind of evolves towards it. You know, for me, I think at the start of the show, he's, you know, kind of swarmy, but not like fully there. And I think he just slowly gets there. So that's why for me personally, he was lower in my consideration. But I do recognize kind of not like House, but he's the face of that show. He's what everyone thinks of when they think of Mad Men. This hard drinking ad exec who drinks at noon and at 1 o'clock and pretty much until the end of the day and then does it all over again. Like this guy is just so mixed up inside, and I think that's always made him interesting.
Yeah.
He's a really good anti-hero in that he's his own worst enemy.
Totally.
and he realizes it.
Mhm.
And he can't change it for most of the show, which is something that I think a lot of us can relate to. It's like, how do I fix the thing I know what to fix? But anyway, but yeah, I think he's definitely relatable anti-hero in that sense.
Yeah, and I think there is like this constant tension between his like inner life and the performance of like of his personality, of his stolen identity. And I was kind of thinking about this, like it's really like his life is an ad campaign, right? It's all a veneer of like flashiness and charm, and he's quick-witted and he performs all these traits, and that allows him to succeed. But knowing that it's false is also the greatest drawback. In the way that he showcases all the things that are great about his personality that I think are, you know, true in a lot of ways. He is like quick-witted, he is capable, he is charming, but you know, at the end of the day, he's a pretty rotten person. in the way, that cigarettes give you cancer. Like, I was thinking about this, like, even just in the pilot, I feel like they lay out that comparison, like, really clearly. I think that's cool.
I do love Matthew Campbell's comment of he's capitalism's greatest soldier. Like, I love that.
Yeah, that alone. Okay, so we have some 50-50 results for House.
Ooh.
Oh,
not helpful, but thank you for your participation. No, I'm just joking. So we're skewing towards no. I think that's interesting. So let's we'll hold on to it, but we won't put it in the rank yet. Let's see where we end up. But I'm interested in putting what about Don Draper at 6?
Yeah, I think given his impact and like on that show, I think as capitalism's greatest soldier, that's such a great line. I think he deserves 6.
All right. But then, okay, so then maybe we put Don Draper in dialogue with someone like Frank Castle, which you guys both put higher in your ranks.
Yes.
Very different, very different. But in terms of what makes the better anti-hero, what do you guys think?
I do want to first acknowledge we saw all your comments on the original video. We did about Punisher. We saw every one of them. Trust us.
Yep.
Frank Castle is like the comic book definition of anti-hero. I think he has been identified as this hero who's gone off the deep end. He's lost everything that means anything to him. So the only meaning is getting justice. And it's bloody and it's not pretty, but it's the only way he can keep going on. And I think that is always been the identifiable thing about Frank Castle and, his signature logo.
Yeah, he's a character who's always been very, edgy, for lack of a better word, controversial on purpose. And only has gotten more, controversial in, current culture, in terms of gun violence. But that ultimately just makes him a more interesting character. It depends on how you handle him, obviously, but I think he's a very relevant character. And the show, I'll admit, isn't like up there with the rest of these other shows, but in terms of the character, and I think the portrayal of him by John Bernthal particularly is probably the best that we've gotten on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Right there with Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, that and Dolph Lundgren, of course.
Okay, so let's put Don Draper on the back burner for a second, and let's bring Billy Butcher into the conversation against Frank Castle, since they're both in the superhero realm. I know, different, but what do you think?
Billy Butcher. Billy Butcher is, again, similar to Frank Castle. He is, at the beginning of the series, he loses his wife to a superhero, so it becomes this worldwide mission to out all superheroes of all their evil crimes. So I think Billy Butcher, for me, is more focused on his mission. Frank Castle is basically like, tomorrow I'm going to shoot up this gang. On Friday, I'm going to shoot up another gang. On Saturday, I'm going to get a martini. Billy Butcher is dedicated from the moment he wakes up to the moment he sleeps. It's how can I expose superheroes? And he never wavers from that mission. So his focus, I think, makes him more interesting in some regards.
Yeah, but he does get tempted, by crossing the line, especially in the last season. I won't go into that, obviously, if anyone hasn't seen it. But if you know, that, you know what he knows.
Well, so who's the better anti-hero then?
I'll leave that to the people.
Who's the better anti-hero? Yeah. Frank Castle or Billy Butcher? Let's see what the people think. Yeah, in terms for House, we got 52% says no, 47% says yes. So I'm going to call that inconclusive, and we'll just leave it for now. I am interested to see what people will go for between Frank Castle and Billy Butcher, because they're different, but they're in the same kind of like space in a way. Curiouser and curiouser. So I put Jax Teller at 10. I'm wondering, Andrew, you put him a little deeper. What do you think?
He's cool. Full stop.
That's a fact.
He right.
Cool guy anti-heroes. Okay, Don Draper versus Jax Teller.
No, Jax Teller is another just. It's a show that really lives and dies by its characters, and Jax. It's just so dynamic. There's so many ways they take him, and you always kind of understand what he's doing, even though you don't agree with it at a lot of points. But I do think Jax is he's just so fascinating. I love him. He's cool. I don't know, those are my main points. He's cool. I love him.
He's cool and I like him.
He's cool and I like him. All right, very fair. Yeah, because I think, like as you said, I mean that show Rise or Dies by Ride or Dies, get it? By his characters, I do think he's very compelling, and I think, yeah, I guess these characters are so different from each other, but they do kind of have these commonalities between them, right? Of like driven by external pressure and like internal desire to get power or prove themselves or loyalty or things like this. So I guess I'm gonna, like, the original rank put him at 10. I put him at 10. I kind of feel like that's a good place for him because I think we have richer characters left to unpack. So if we're good with that, do we feel good about that?
Yeah.
All right. So let's put him at 10. And then we're waiting to see what the people think about Frank Castle. Okay, do we want to put Don Draper at 6 then? Are we feeling confident about that choice now that we're getting into it?
We can do that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Maybe. I did want to ask. Okay, 54% says Billy Butcher is the better anti-hero.
Right.
Wow.
I like that. I like that all of these are close. I like that the polls are coming in close. It's like I think that shows how how split the characters can be themselves. So I'm game to put Billy Butcher at 7. I'm game to put Frank Castle at 8.
Two gun-toting guys just doing their best, you know?
Doing their best. Aren't we all?
Just trying to make a killing.
Hey! Okay, cool. So do you guys want to tell us a little bit about Daemon Targaryen?
Oh, I've been waiting for this.
Okay. Yeah, okay, let's go. Let's hear it.
In the comments for the first video or the second video, I forget which one, there was a lot of love for Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones. And I thought about that for a little bit, especially after season 3, he starts to kind of blur that line. But I think if there's one tried and true anti-hero in this universe, even though it's only one season in, it's Daemon Targaryen. I mean, he is the ultimate bad boy of Westeros. I mean, he's mean, he's sexy, he kicks butt, and he's really cruel, but he is kind of like on the good guy side, like depending on how you view it. Daemon's so hot right now.
Yeah.
So hot right now.
I'm wearing the symbol of his house, just for him.
Oh, is that what that is? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, that's
in case he's watching. Yeah.
In case you're watching. What I love about this character so much is that if you watch the first episode of House of Dragon, he's the villain. He's the straight up villain of this show. But as you go on and the characters, all the other characters around him sink to lower and lower depths, you're thinking, honestly, is this guy that bad compared to the rest of them and what they're doing? Yes, but it kind of evens out. So I think it's so fascinating to go from he's the most extreme to he being leveled out over the show. And he's young. It's a brand new, fresh character. But honestly, I had given up on Game of Thrones after the last season, and he brought me back. So I give him a lot of credit for doing that.
Yeah, so you don't feel that it's too soon to make a judgment on this character, because it's true. I'm seeing like Mike Patel in the chat has kind of like made a point that a lot of these are very like storied characters who have kind of a sealed legacy. But I think it's interesting to say that this character brought you back into the universe in a meaningful way. Is that enough to put him in this rank amongst these characters?
Again,
in your opinion?
I'll leave
putting
it
you
to
on
the
the
people.
spot. I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm
Andrew,
to the people.
defend your case. All right, let's get a poll. Do we want to see Daemon Targaryen present in this rank? Yes or no? And let's see what the people think. I also was interested. I put the Americans in my rank, the Jennings, because I was like, I think it's very bold to make like a political anti-hero, like an enemy of the state anti-hero, and make them sympathetic to an American audience, principally. They're like, I think their relationships are so interesting. They're kind of like the villains in their own lives and in their relationships and in their family and to their home country and to their present country. Like they embody like hero and villain in kind of all of these different factions. So I thought that was interesting. And then Tim, you put Hannibal at 5 also. Did you want to make a case for that? Or are you satisfied?
I mean, I'm okay with leading him off if he's too villainous for everyone's tastes, no pun intended. I just love the portrayal by Mads Mikkelsen in this one. He does something different than Anthony Hopkins. He's very alluring almost. It's a kind of Hannibal.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I do think we can let that one go. I haven't seen a lot of love for that, but I do think, again, like amazing character. But let's see where we end up. Sorry, I have this Bluetooth mouse that
I was gonna say, what's going on?
Whoa!
The Bluetooth mouse is the
everything's
anti-hero.
crazy. Yeah. Okay, 52% says no, that Daemon Targaryen does not deserve to be in this top 10. So, all right, let's make it simple. Would you rather see House or Targaryen in the top 10? Or is there
Targaryen.
Yeah, all of them. Or is there another character that we want to see saved? Because I also think there could be space for, I mean, Tommy Shelby is an interesting character. I mean, The Walking Dead has like millions of anti-heroes that we could get into. So maybe while we wait to see what else cracks the top 10, maybe it's time that we get into our top 3. I think it's interesting that we all put Dexter at number 3. What do you guys think makes him, beyond the premise that he's a serial killer who kills serial killers, what makes him the 3rd greatest anti-hero? Maybe it's the premise. What do you guys think?
I think Dexter is always, the fun thing about Dexter is he's always moving the goalpost of morality. It's like, at first it's very clear. He just kills serial killers. That's his thing. That's the only thing he's going to do. But when you see some of the stuff he does in later seasons that, controversial for a lot of reasons, you see that he keeps trying to rein things in and justify different actions to the point where he realizes that, oh no, I'm getting lost in this. I'm really like falling into it. And I think that's the most fascinating part of an anti-hero story, when they look around and go, oh my God, where am I?
Yeah.
So I think he is such a complex guy. And if it not for the iffy writing on his last few seasons, I think he could have gone even higher.
Yeah. I did notice that our original 2013 rank came out, I think, a month before the season finale, or the series finale, which is telling. Not that we got it wrong, but we just didn't have all the information yet. You know, like
Dexter's fate had not yet been sealed.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think what's amazing about like the character of Dexter Morgan is that they're able to write a show that makes you feel empathy for a character who himself has none. It's like we're along for the journey with this character who has no feelings, barely any relationships. And so, or like, you know, his relationships are kind of like one-sided. He's just like involved, he's just present. But they're able to write him in such a way that we end up being very invested in his story, despite the fact that he's kind of like, you know, he doesn't even seemingly like consider himself a human. He always refers to humans and people, other people, as if he himself is something different. But in that, I think we still kind of like are interested in watching his like own moral debates, how he's able to navigate morality. But in the end, it's, you know, he's just another serial killer, right? It kind of like it's kind of like the joke's on you, like us, like watching, like oh yeah, he is just another serial killer, but you like him, so. So I think we can confidently put him at 3.
Yeah,
love that. Now, before we get into the Soprano versus Heisenberg debate, which I feel like we're all here to do, let's settle once and for all what we're putting at number 9. My vote is for House just on legacy. This man carries the show for like years and years and years. He's won almost, I think is it the record for the most Emmy nominations for that category? Because Don Draper or John Hamm and James Gandolfini also got like many nominations in that category, like 8 or something. That's something crazy. 46% says House. Would rather see it number 9. I think that's the way to go. Like, this is a game-changing character.
Yeah, I think in terms of legacy, it's hard to argue against House in this regard.
My apologies. We misinterpreted the data.
No?
No, the people would rather see Daemon Targaryen. I stand
yes,
corrected.
I knew it.
I stand corrected. Yeah.
I was testing you and you did the right
spoken.
thing.
It was.
Wait, I think I think again, one more time.
Wait. Okay, hang
Okay.
on.
46% said anyone else but those 2.
Okay.
All right, Green Party it is. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
interesting. So
can I suggest something?
Please.
I think each one of us should put up one anti-hero that isn't Daemon or House, and have them duke it out. Just one that we haven't brought up yet.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna vote, maybe controversially, for Frank Underwood. Because that's a crazy anti-hero. I know Kevin Spacey, but like, crazy anti-hero, amazing character. What do you guys vote?
I'm gonna take. I think because my roommate can quote this show from top to bottom, Tommy Shelby from Peaky Blinders. Admittedly, I don't have a lot of experience, but I know Cillian Murphy is great. Every time I watch my roommate watch it, he is just throwing himself over the chair. So I'm gonna trust his instincts and go with Tommy Shelby for my outside pick.
Love that. Tim, what do you think?
I'm kind of looking at Nurse Jackie as one that we should talk about. I mean, a lot of these characters in this list are kind of like, oh, you know, I'm a mob boss, or I'm a serial killer, you know, or like things that most people aren't. um, I mean, I haven't looked at the data, but I'm pretty sure most people aren't those things. Whereas Nurse Jackie, you know, is a much more uh, grounded, relatable character, but severely flawed in her vices. So I like that pick for myself.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get a poll. Do we want Nurse Jackie, Tommy Shelby, or Frank Underwood? And that'll be our number 9 pick. Let's decide once.
Who would win in a fight?
Tommy Shelby. Tommy Shelby.
Yeah, probably like hands down.
Or just Cillian Murphy, just regularly.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. Edie Falco's pretty tough, man. Nurse Jackie's so interesting because she came right out of the Sopranos into this show, or you know, like the time gap. I don't know, the time gap was like a year or two maybe, but that was her next like big project for sure. And it's like she's kind of like the counterpart to House, except she really cares about the patients. It's not a medical drama. It is like a character-driven drama. The medical stuff isn't really like at the forefront of it, but it's really like but the way that she like navigates her relationships, she's kind of like she wants to do everything to save lives and be like the better person, the hero, but she's so driven by her own demons. Super interesting character, super interesting show. I'm seeing some love for Barry. Why don't we have Barry as an honorable mention?
Yeah.
Secret menu item, we do get honorable mentions.
Yeah, I love Barry. I love this show absolutely. To me, though, I think Barry is more of a straight up villain. I think if you really look at the show and what he's done from episode 1, I think Barry's a villain. I do not think he's an anti-hero, in my opinion. That's why I left him off, even though I absolutely love this show.
I will say, Mackenzie, I think you marked off Negan as an HM. I don't mind that either, but I just want to make sure we get Barry on there.
Let's get some poll results in here and see what's going on. Yeah. Yeah, I think we can add Daemon Targaryen and House as honorable mentions, since they kind of got edged out. Ooh, okay. 51% say Tommy Shelby.
Wow, more than half.
Yeah, love that.
What a sweep.
That's it. Yeah, and it's divided, our divided squad today. Love it. Tommy Shelby takes number 9. And then I think we can also add maybe Frank Underwood as an honorable mention. I think that's kind of interesting. Okay. So now the big one.
The title
Who
fight.
wants to go first? Yeah, who wants to go first?
Oh man. You know, you were the one who knocked him, so I'm electing you first.
Okay, all right, I'm knocking. I mean, it's interesting because these are very similar characters in certain respects. I mean, in terms of not necessarily their businesses, but in terms of their power dynamics. You know, Walter White's is more of a climb to power, but I mean, but in terms of how they use it, I like Walter White the best because you get to see his whole journey from lowly chemistry high school teacher into this monstrous, you know, drug kingpin toward the end, who, you know, does it for himself, you know, and doesn't, who didn't do it all for his family, you know, and I just, I didn't expect to love this show as much as I did. I think I got shown once in high school chemistry, and then I was kind of like, "What was that?" And then I went back to it, and I was like, "Oh, Mr. Fix was onto something. Yeah, I just I love Bryan Cranston's performance in this so much that he's so captivating. I have to pick Walter White.
Yeah, okay, so that's super interesting because Vince Gilligan actually said that there would be no Walter White without Tony Soprano. And so I guess it's like I didn't just go for the legacy vote. I didn't just go because I think their legacies are equivalent, honestly, at this point. I don't think one necessarily edges out the other. But I think what's interesting from an anti-hero perspective is that at some point, Walter just becomes the villain. And even though we're like so invested in his character, he stops being relatable at a point and he becomes like a cinematic supervillain. Whereas Tony Soprano stays at least a little bit relatable and identifiable all throughout the run of the show. And you kind of feel this like tragic sense that like, and maybe this is true of Walter White too, that ultimately their fate is of their own making. But I think like the therapy sessions provide a really like powerful kind of like Greek chorus like insight into what this like figure's internal life is like in a way that we don't always see with Walter. I think at some point Walter becomes just driven by, you know, a thirst for power. He loses sight of what he's really after. Whereas I think Tony stays consistently within this balance of good and evil throughout the seasons.
Yeah.
That was why I voted for him as the better anti-hero. But I mean, there's nothing, you can't say anything bad about Walter White.
Well, you could say a lot of that.
Yeah, as an anti-hero, not as a guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
I'm
guy.
torn. He's a great guy, you know? Get to know him, have a beer.
Doing his
These are two fantastic characters. There's no losing. I like either one who wins, it's honorable. I think one thing that is I think why Walter slightly got there for me, and again, both great characters, but with Walter and all these other characters, there's some part of the journey we didn't see. You know, we didn't see, some of the things are fleshed out later, but there's some part of the journey we didn't see, some part of their transformation we didn't get. Whereas Walter White, we see he was a high school chemistry teacher. We see day one of that. And we go into this guy who is blowing up drug dealers' houses casually just to make a point. And to see that evolution, to see every step of how you yourself could become this. How does a regular guy become this? I just think it's a show that hasn't done that for me since, of showing that complete journey and slope. And that's why I think when I think anti-hero, I think, how do you get there? Walter White will show you how. That's what put me slightly there for me.
True, but conversely, I think David Strauss in the chat raises a really good point when he says, like, Tony was born into it. He never had a choice. So his journey with his demons and a sense of obligation and duty, and, you know, simultaneously his kind of desire for like power and success is more sympathetic because in a way he must. In a way he doesn't have a choice. Whereas, you know, I mean, I guess Walter's choice is to accept his kind of sad, you know, almost like he's set up as a very pathetic character in some ways. He's very sad. Whereas I think there's the inverse with Tony, where he's set up his visually, like his personality that people see is so big and so powerful and outspoken and in control. But then we see his internal life. He actually has, I mean, the same struggles that maybe everyone has. I'm super excited to see what
yeah.
I think it could, like, I would be happy to see either of these at number one. I don't think there is a wrong answer. Yeah, Rebecca in the chat says, I think you have to pick Tony because he was the first TV anti-hero. And I think that's true. I mean, I don't think we should vote just based on legacy, but I do think that maybe arguably any of the characters on this list would not exist without Tony Soprano. And yet, 75% of people in the chat are going with Walter White. I respect that, but I'm fascinated by it.
Wow.
Cue the GIF. Cue the GIF of Walter White walking away from the explosion.
Yeah.
Is it because Tony Soprano faded to black? Is that why?
Everyone's still mad about the ending. Yeah.
This is their revenge.
Get over it. It was 20 years ago. Wow. Okay. Amazing. I don't disagree with that, because I think, you know, we can say that Walter White is maybe the evolution of what was carved out by the character of Tony Soprano, and I super respect that. Very cool. So let's do one last quick poll. I mean, what do we like this rank? Do we hate this rank? Can we live with it? Let's see what people think. Tim and Andrew, what do you guys think about this?
I'm looking, and I think it's hilarious. We have House of Dragon House and House of Cards next to each other. It's so funny.
Is there any other house shows we're missing? Let us know in the comments.
Extreme home renovation. I just think
going up in the chat.
all of them. Yeah, I just think there are so many great anti-heroes that we didn't even bring up, that we didn't even mention on here, and I think it's just really great how many are out there and how many fascinating layered characters we've gotten in the last 20 years or so.
Are you surprised by this rank? I'm not.
No.
No.
Not at all.
I'm glad that we got Tommy Shelby in there, because I know, like, there's a lot of, I'm not as like into this show as I think a lot of people are. I mean, it's clearly amazing, but I know people have been very, like, this has been a hot topic of discussion the last couple of years, and I'm excited. I'm happy that we got him in the rank in the end.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one got mad at for Jack Bauer. I'm genuinely surprised.
Well, Jack Bauer got mad, and he's gonna find us soon.
Just stay a day ahead. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm curious about the legacy of that show, because that was, I mean, another alongside House and Sopranos, like, you know, these huge event TV shows. But this is one I feel like does not get talked about the same way as these other shows. I wonder, like,
it's very of its time, of its era.
I think so too.
You know, in the 2000s, you know, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the 2000s, so it kind of was an appropriate analog for that.
Yeah. And as an anti-hero, it's like, do we look back and think the things he did were morally questionable? Like, do we have a different perspective on those actions? I wonder. I think that's interesting.
I'm also fascinated to see what would happen if they did Weeds today, set in the modern world. Like, would it just be a like a slice of life store sitcom? Like,
yeah, what drives the drama in that in today's world?
A competitor across the street.
It's true.
I started a legal dispensary.
Yeah. It's like everyone under 40 in Toronto presently. All right, 42% of people in the chat say they feel pretty good about this rank. 33% say they would make significant changes. 19% say nailed it, and 4% say fail.
Well, it's the 19% that are right, obviously.
Yeah, did we count our own votes?
I voted 12 times.
No. All right, cool. I'm going to give one last chance. If anybody in the chat wants to nominate someone, we do have space for one more honorable mention. But if not, then I feel like we covered a lot of ground here. Wendy Bird should have been an HM. Need a lady.
I love Wendy. Yeah, I don't mind Wendy at all. She really takes over the show.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I love that. going for a more like modern character? Because I guess like Nurse Jackie is always the one that comes up in these conversations about like a female antihero, because she kind of like broke that mold. That character kind of broke that mold that way. But I love the idea of going for a more modern character, because as we're seeing, like all of these kind of like cornerstone characters have created so much more space for interesting characters to come. So I think that's great. Great job, everyone. Thank you for your valuable contributions. This has been an absolute delight. Just a reminder that if you like what you saw, you want to jump into our conversation next time, just go to WatchMojo's YouTube channel page and become a member. You'll get all kinds of exclusive perks and content. You'll also be able to jump into our next show and have more of a say in what we do here. So thank you for joining, and please join us at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for daily trivia. The theme today is music, and you can enter your weekend with a little more cash in your pocket if you're lucky and you know your stuff, which I know our fans do. So thank you very much, guys. This has been a pleasure, and have a great weekend.
Calling pop culture superfans everywhere. Do you love to argue with WatchMojo's top 10 ranks? Introducing WatchMojo's first and very own party game. Bring your superpowers to the table and fight for your pick to be at the top of the list. It's all the fun of the comment section, but in real life.